On this week's show, discussing the innovation journey with Rob Ioanna from Syska Hennessy Group. All right. Well, you guys might notice we're down and slim today. It's just Rob and I. Rob, how are you doing?
I'm doing great today, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for sitting down, taking the time out of your schedule. It's going to be an awesome time to talk today. I think we're going to have a whole lot of fun. Where are you coming to us from today?
I am located in Rock Center in New York City, in the great state of New York.
New York City, East Coast. That's where I'm from. So, we'll get a little East Coast, just you and I today. Maybe we'll talk fast, go fast, have a lot of fun, right?
That's how we roll.
It is how we roll, like nowhere else. Well, before we jump into it, we've got to pause for the cause. And we're here for Pause for the Cause with the ConTech Crew and Brent Darnell. Talk to me a little bit about what you're up to and what you can teach folks these days.
Well, for the last 20 plus years, I've been talking about this mind-body connection and working a lot on focusing on things like stress and nutrition and sleep and exercise and how that affects performance and how that affects longevity. We've been focusing on this peak level of mental, physical, and emotional performance. Construction in general is a highly stressful environment, and you see the stress, and you always get the "I'm fine" answer. But I always try to dig a little deeper because people say, I haven't been sleeping great, and I'm really eating crappy food, and I feel anxious, I feel depressed, I feel, we'll start to really get into those conversations and figure out what's going on.
Those are the critical things people need to it's the little steps, right? You're not here to replace a mental health diagnosis, right? You're here, but there's some resources you've got that can help people kind of figure out if, hey, they might be headed down towards that one.
Right, exactly. Barring some mental health diagnosis, or if you think you have a mental health diagnosis, please go seek someone out and get that help and that diagnosis. But barring just a diagnosis or you're really struggling or having suicidal thoughts, this isn't going to help you probably. But to check in and see where am I now and how do I keep from going down that rabbit hole, there's some great resources. And if you go to brentdarnell.com/resources, first there's an emotional intelligence and physical symptoms survey test. So we get your emotional profile and we get your physical profile based on physical symptoms, and we can tell how your body's working. And then we can correlate those two. And if you're experiencing burnout, it will show up in probably both of those evaluations. It's free. You just download it and do it. And just so see where you are. And if burnout's the top 2 or 3 that pop up and show up there, I would pay attention and start to really look at what are you doing with stress and nutrition and sleep and exercise and daily reflection and those kinds of things that we know we need to do to keep us healthy and keep us sane and keep us on track.
You've got to check in with where you are. You've got to work on balancing. It's not about the diagnosis. It's about preventing people from getting too far down the road. Like most of our construction folks that listen in, they take care of their cars. They keep them up to date. This is no different. You've got to put in the maintenance on the body, on the mind, because you're racing this car around the track, right? We're not going to change that we're a bunch of race cars out there, but we can change that we do the right maintenance, take the right time, and really check in.
One more resource in there. It's the Tough Guy Survival Kit. Guy being gender neutral. It's specifically geared toward more field folks, but there's a really great chapter on stress management and peak performance in there. And it talks about meditation techniques and mindfulness techniques and breathing techniques.
Well, those are all great resources. If you didn't hear that before, it's brentdarnell.com. That's BRENTDARNELL.com/resources. Check them out. They're there for free. Brent, thanks for joining us on this Pause for the Cause. Hey, remember, we're back on YouTube, so check out youtube.com/@the-ConTech Crew, where you can see our shorts and our full-length episodes. Make sure you subscribe so we know you're out there and you don't miss an episode. So, Rob, Chief Technical Officer for Syska Hennessy Group, what would you say it is you do here?
Well, interestingly enough, I'm not the chief technology officer. I'm not in charge of IT. Um, my role across the firm, I'm in charge of the technical operations of the firm. I'm in charge of our national BIM team, our technical guidelines and standards, and as well. I'm also in charge of what we're going to talk about today is Syska Innovations, which is a subsidiary that we formed about 3 years ago so that we could invest in both seed stage companies and in our own ideas and innovations from a research and development standpoint. Um, and I'm also, from a P&L responsibility, I'm in charge of our largest office here, the New York office. So I'm a pretty busy guy, but I have a lot of fun at what I do.
Yeah, you wear a lot of hats. And so I want to break it down. So first,
hmm
for people who don't really know about Syska, give an idea so those listening in their cars don't try to pull up their phones and look at something. Give them an idea of what Syska does, core to the business, so they know
hmm
what you're all about.
Yeah. So Syska is a mechanical and electrical technology engineering firm. We've been in business we're going to celebrate our 95th year. We basically work on really technically complicated buildings like hospitals, airports, data centers, etc. I am an HVAC engineer as I started by trade. And I am a active practicing PE, which is probably different than most people in the innovations and the venture space. I'd still practice as well.
You're still practicing engineer, huh?
Yeah, I was just on a phone call this morning about a sizing of a transformer and how where we can source it from and how we could value engineer it to a different size and make a certain breaker work. Yeah,
But I bet you getting into that nitty gritty kind of keeps you connected, though, doesn't it?
it keeps you very connected, absolutely. And I feel like in our space, you got to stay connected, otherwise you lose your edge. I'm not going to be able to do some of the things I do if I can't still manage client relationships and things like that.
Well, yeah, and we all don't get to do our thing if we don't have those happy clients out there, right? And you can't really know what they need and
Yeah.
innovate if you don't aren't connected with them.
This is true. This is true.
So I want to talk about this. You've got a couple of things here. You're an engineering firm,
hmm
large, complicated engineering firm. So you have a true kind of focus of what you do,
hmm
but you're also really kind of leaned into innovation. So what does that innovation really mean to you, and Syska as a whole?
Yeah. So, we embarked on a strategic plan about 8 years ago. We had a 10-year plan, and we did a lot of research, talked to a lot of people, and innovation was one of our core principles of the firm. And we're always trying to decide, how do we make our clients feel like we're innovative? How do we attract talent because they think we're innovative and they have the best tools at their disposal? So we always had this on our strategic plan about how we were going to do this. And I think we got like a little bit of fortune. I was introduced to a couple of the venture funds that are specific to our industry, Shadow Ventures, and at the time it was Borealis Ventures. Met the folks that work there, Jesse and KP, really, really sharp guys, and they kind of opened up my eyes to a whole different world that was going on, sort of ConTech, prop tech, however you want to phrase it or call it. And I realized, number one, it was cool to be involved with different seed stage and startup companies, but it also kind of, it gave us the ability to be able to affect some change that normally we'd wait for the trains and the large companies of the world to affect sort of the change we want in products. This put us in the driver's seat a little bit, so it really kind of spun me up a little bit personally. And then along the way, um, you know, we really felt like we could also do this internally. And we talked to some folks at TT and DPR who have these sort of programs internally. And we're like, you know what, this would be awesome if we could have some sort of similar function internally. And at the end of the day, I think we focused on innovation. For us, is first and foremost our ability for professional development, right? Um, you know, our people are our biggest asset. We're consulting engineers. We don't sell a specific product, right? We're selling our brains, right? So we really have to have the top talent, the top people in our industry. Otherwise, we're not going to fulfill our mission, right? So by working from a technology standpoint, making sure that we're always up to date with the latest tools that are out there and driving new tools, right? I'll give some examples of how we worked with some of the seed stage companies to give our team members the best tools, right? Knowing that we can also monetize this is another sort of important factor, right? I think people like the ability to know that they sort of were helping a cause and they were sort of able to make this company profitable, and we were able to bring these sort of investments up the food chain. And then lastly, it's like we're also trying to make sure from a risk management standpoint that we're not the company that gets disrupted by something that's coming. So the more you participate, the more you see it, even if it's little sort of steps, right? You're one of those firms, and for us that's those are kind of like the important tenets.
Yeah, that's like you're kind of hit a couple of pillars there. So I wanna take a step into sort of how you got into the investment game. I think this is a
Hmm.
unique piece we're seeing in construction, and I don't think it's as well known as it should be.
Hmm.
That some of the groups you're talking about and others in the industry, don't know a lot of engineering firms that are doing it, but are investing in their own disruption. And when I say that, I try to use the term disruption as I try to be careful with it because it's more. So what's the saying? It takes a whole lot of time to become an overnight success, right?
Hmm.
Disruption
Yeah.
doesn't happen overnight. It's a long game of understanding, investment, growing the product, et cetera. And it's an opportunity for organizations to get involved and guide that, but also ride that a little bit, right? So, talk to
Yeah.
me a little bit about what that journey's been like on the investment side and
Hmm.
how Syska's seen it as a strategic advantage.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. So we were introduced at the time. There was a bunch of companies that were coming out in the reality capture space, and we were introduced to a company called Open Space. And they were at the time looking to raise money, and we on our side were always looking for differentiators in selling our services. We got introduced to them from a partner, a friend of ours, and right away we kind of started using it. We started piloting. We gave them a ton of feedback about their product. We had to, one of the biggest feedback, we're like, hey, listen, a lot of this is in the basement. Like, you got to make sure this thing works in the basement of a building where the signal and stuff isn't as like, and we really worked with them. Like, my team worked with them like a lot, even like putting the lights on the camera, like, and we got it to a point where it was really a product that we could use for ourselves. And at the same time, I feel like we helped them along their journey as well. For those of you who don't know the product, it's basically a camera that's on top of your hard hat, and as you walk around a job site, it snips pictures. Basically as you're walking around, and then it stitches all those pictures back together and gives you a 3D sort of model of the space that you're in. Kind of like very low effort, very high reward type of thing. So that was something that, and I think you all know, Open Space on their path is doing extremely well, and we're really happy about that.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one because a lot of the startups, especially in the technology space that came into construction early on, really stumbled
Hmm.
because of exactly what you just said. They didn't understand the reality of our world.
Hmm.
I didn't even understand it, when I came over, what last mile really meant. And a lot of times we're building something before there's infrastructure there,
Yeah.
or you're building it in a basement and working inside and around a lot of steel and concrete that, let's be honest, they just mess up with signals. So
Hmm.
I'm sure they had to have been excited about that. But also, how did that back and forth go? Did you learn from them as well? I think that's something
Hmm.
that we need to highlight.
Yeah, so like for example, as we were learning, as you know, we would use the product because we go to job sites all the time. A lot of our work is in existing buildings, and a lot of our work is during construction, right? Monitoring construction. So this enabled us, especially during COVID. It was kind of amplified. So um, they were kind of a lot of the ideas that sort of they were portraying as why they're doing this. We were able to kind of pivot a little bit and use the product a little bit more on the functions and things they had. For example, we were doing a project in the Hudson Yards, and it's a building that's going up and it's being built, and we had designed a fit out for a certain client there while it was being constructed. And we all know, as something's being built, things are always subject to change. So we were putting some air handling equipment in a mechanical room, and as the building went up, we happened to be walking the site, and we're taking the picture of the hard hat on, and it comes back, and my mechanical engineer walks into my office, and he's like, hey, listen, something's going on in that mechanical room. And we had the software up. It had an exact picture 3D model of where the of the space, and it had our BIM model pinned at the exact same spot. So we saw the future of design, and we were able to kind of say, okay, Houston, we've got a problem way, way, way earlier than we would have before. And it was pretty cool because we're able to see sort of the existing space right there as it's being built alongside our BIM model in the exact same view. And some of that functionality we sort of learned as we were using, as they were coaching us through. So the use cases sort of grew fortuitously.
So that's a fascinating back and forth between you and the vendor, and it's really influencing what you do. So how did that, change of looking at the model, looking at the reality, change process for Syska, and how do you incorporate those kind of changes? Do you have other ways that happens?
Yeah, so it fundamentally changed sort of our survey and our construction process. We have on any job, we have like, 6 or 7 different subject matter experts, an HVAC engineer, an electrical, a plumbing, a fire alarm, BMS, vertical transportation, a lighting specialist. And now that we have like a virtual walkthrough of the job site, when we have our internal construction meeting, we get to walk the entire site with every subject matter expert in a matter of minutes, right? So it really changed the game from a process perspective, where before it was like, all right, well, you got to get to the job site every so on, you have to do this. It got to the point where we narrowed down a bunch of our processes. All our offices actually have instituted this, and we're using it on pretty much all our projects, to the point where we're also offering kind of as like a value add to the owner, because one of the other value points of open space is the owners really like having it from a record standpoint and from a sort of overall view into their projects as well.
Yeah, it's awesome to see too, because I imagine with that change in process now too, and all those experts, not only just have 6 or 7 of them that are focused on one job trying to describe something. If they need one of those experts that's on another job to jump in and collaborate, you're not driving to the site to see it. You can probably like virtually lock in, and that's really reducing risk for you guys as a company.
Yeah, absolutely. And a picture is worth, I would say a picture's worth a million words. Fire alarm control, he looks at where the fire alarm panel is and how the conduit and other things are run, and he knows whether it's right or wrong. So it's really been an extreme help to us.
So I want to, and like open space, and you've probably had a couple of others along the way. Is there anything, that you could really, if people are listening in, that, what should they be looking for in startups? What do you look for? What are you doing to find those next opportunities?
So for us, we went through this exercise where we tried to identify like our clients' pain points alongside our own, right? Because for us, our business is all about finding clients and executing, right? So we went out and we said, hey, what are the pain points, and what are the items that are driving them, and what are the things. So we came up with about 7 different buckets of innovation, right? We put it on our website. I've talked about it numerous times in front of venture folk and other at different incubator type meetings. And those 7 buckets basically identify where we play and where we think dramatic change can come from. Like, for instance, one of the ones that we hear all the time is our clients keep asking us, how do we get to net zero? And for us, that's a huge, complicated question. And to be honest, for a lot of the products and the materials and stuff that are out there, they're not 100% ready to get there. So we're trying to help spur that by investing in companies that are doing things to decarbonize the environment, so that you can sort of get to this net zero approach. It led us to a company called EnviroPower, which is it's a boiler. And it essentially it produces electricity as a byproduct of the boiler. So it's a replacement boiler for somebody who has a natural gas system. Take your old boiler out, you put this in. It boils water to make steam. Originally, the steam spins a steam turbine, creating electricity, and then the condensate from the steam process is your hot water that you can pump around for domestic water, etc. And the electricity that's generated basically happens almost for free. So what happens is this unit reduces your carbon usage by about 50%. And it pays for itself in about 2.5 years. And then, depending upon how much your electricity rate is, if you're in New York City, it's pretty expensive, right? You're making thousands of dollars a year on your ROI. So for us, it was a great tool. A lot of our clients saw this and said, "Hey, I can actually do this now. This isn't like 10 years down the road, I'm going to put all my fuel cells and do all this, and that." This was kind of something they could do now. So we identified that. We've been working with them for probably about 2 years as they're going through the commercialization process. Interestingly enough, one of the things that we found that I didn't think was going to come out of this from a strategic perspective was like our ability to help these startups place their product in a market and place its specific sort of use case, right? As consulting engineers, like, we're in the midst of the entire process. We have to deal with pretty much everybody across the food chain, all the way down from the contractor up to the owner and everybody in between. So, and we deal with vendors directly who are selling equipment. So some of the advice and the strategy that we give to them, I think, really help them pivot and get their products sort of commercialized and basically get them out to the market a little bit faster, and puts them in the right frame, let's say, than maybe they would have originally been thinking.
At the ConTech Crew, we focus on technology that solves industry problems, and we've always believed in our sponsors. So much so that I went to work for one of them. So today, I want to talk to you about Join. Every construction project is a unique prototype, and it's actually shaped by thousands of decisions that impact the owner's business case, design, and the budget. Today, the communication driving these decisions is disjointed across all the stakeholders. Work happens in email, Excel, estimating, resulting in delays, waiting for decisions, waiting for access to information, and sometimes that information is outdated and incomplete. Managing the expectations of the team and keeping the project moving forward is a constant challenge, and a lot of times drives skepticism amongst the contributors. Join empowers general contractors to build with confidence and maximize the potential of every project by connecting these owners through new workflows that fit into your existing processes. We bring design teams and trade partners into a single platform. There's transparency and collaboration in the decision-making, which builds trusts and sets projects up for success. You might be asking yourself, do you need another tool? Well, let me tell you, Join fits in seamlessly with your processes and your other tools. In fact, we're here to help those other tools. Regardless of your estimating system or your project management process, Join will be a valuable added resource without disrupting those other systems and your teams. So listen, put your spreadsheets on ice and leave your email behind for the decision-making platform for the built environment. Learn more at join.build. Yeah, because you have that purview from basically the building product manufacturer all the way up the chain to the owner, everybody who's going to
Hmm.
use it and how it's going to operate. So,
Yeah.
it, especially because you do a lot of, retrofit, so to speak,
Yeah.
removing things around, you have a view of how it's performed and how it
Hmm.
could perform in the future. You can really bring that to the table and guide. And one of the hardest things for any new startup is product placement,
Hmm.
understanding the mindset and mentality of the industry and really connecting with them so that you're, providing a service.
Yeah.
Whereas, a lot of people, there's a lot of solutions looking for a problem out there, this allows it to be the opposite. You guys are really looking, those 7 buckets are real problems.
Hmm.
I think it's interesting too, because if you said it and described what you do for a living,
Hmm.
and chief technology, everybody thinks just tech, but you really focus on innovation in general. So it is,
Yeah.
in this case, a product. So
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
else do you kind of look at innovation as an organization? And it's not just technology. So what other areas are you guys really focused on and you focused on for the organization?
Yeah. So, after about a year navigating through this space and looking at different investments, and my partner's getting really excited as some of the investments that we've made now, they go to their next seed and the multiple has gone up, et cetera. And people love that we tell this story, that we use the open space and the spoiler and some other things that we had. As I started to meet more folks, I started to see kind of companies like TT and DPR and how they take that same sort of mentality and they sort of incubate the ideas that they have internally, right, to try and move them forward in a parallel path, right? So, like a consulting engineer, we have projects, and on projects, we innovate all over the place, and we try different things, and we do different things. And most firms I would venture are the same thing. But we realize that we need to carve out a separate parallel path, right, for us to really, challenge our employees to solve their problems and our client problems, and then backfill that with resources from a centralized standpoint, so that we can sort of move the needle, and basically really engage our folks and kind of like motivate our staff. And I'll give you an example. So we went out and we were like, all right, how are we going to do this? Right? There's no other MEP engineering firm that I know that has a corporate ideation program. So we start doing we start doing some research, right? We start doing research, and it's a pretty cool story. I found, I, I I found some stuff on the internet, and we saw HP's idea funnel, right? We saw StageGate. You could pay for StageGate, and it's the boom, 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 boom stage way of doing ideation. We talked to companies like TT, DPR, and Jensen Hughes, and they have a certain sort of secret sauce for them. I looked at Disney actually. Disney's innovation story is super cool. If you're into innovation, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you look into that. Their approach to innovation, although not directly applicable, I love the way they have the dreamers, the realists, and the critics, and they have this sort of step process to keep the dreamers dreaming and the critics sort of below and the realists making it work. And we borrowed from all these things. And then actually, it's funny, one of the best innovation videos that we found is a video about Chick-fil-A online and how Chick-fil-A does innovation. And it's basically a totally decentralized approach. And I enjoy this. A guy by the name of, I think it's Kin Lee. Their process is decentralized, and they have innovation coaches. And at that point, it was kind of like ding, ding, ding. That was what we were gonna try and go down a similar path, borrowing from each one of these different innovation approaches. So we sort of went through the firm. I was looking for people who would be interested in this, and a bunch of people, overwhelmingly were interested, and we started coaching the coaches on what innovation is and how it could be. And in the same vein, at the same time, we put a workshop together that basically built our own process. So for better or for worse, we had our own funnel, whatever you want to call it, stage gate. Um, and we labeled it, we called it SysDev. It's system development, for short. And we basically mapped out a process in the firm, a 4-step process where you can submit an idea. The idea gets sort of ruminated by people. We put a lot of thought into the idea and how it could, where it could be. And we focused on how this innovation could create value. And I think that's one of the things that, if you're in the innovation game, you really have to think about that hard. Innovation isn't just something different. Like a drone isn't really an innovation, right? It's how you use something different, a different technology to create value. So what'd you do with that actually created value for what you're doing? So you have to really work hard when somebody comes up with an idea like, oh, that's a great idea. We had tons of great ideas, but a lot of the great ideas just made the contractor's job easier, or it made like our deliverable look prettier. And at the end of the day, for us, it's like we want to grow our top line, we want to grow our bottom line, and we want to reduce risk, right? That's really what it kind of boils down to. It's an interesting journey to kind of get to that point.
So SysDev's sort of like a crowdsourcing for Syska. And again, you went to that diversity of the different types of engineers you have. So that's got to have brought a lot of different perspectives to the table. I'm wondering where some of those landed. Do you have a success story in there that you can kind of talk about? So people can kind of put the rubber to the road there.
I guess to give a little bit more backstory to contextualize it, but we held an ideathon across the firm. And we basically, at that time, we rolled out the process and we showed how we were going to basically, when we thought we liked an idea, we were going to bombard it with resources, both internally, consultants, if we needed a sheet metal fitter, like whatever it needed to kind of get to the point where it needed to be, support that idea and get it to the next stage. So, we're about a 500 person firm. And we got about 80 solid ideas to kind of run down. And we had a nice little thing. We made the finalists. We had a big vote. The finalists made a video, and the videos were great. Some of them were commercials. Some of them were really funny. It was a great experience. And out of those ideas that were out of that ideathon, we decided to pick about 10 of those ideas and move them forward. And some of them saved an enormous amount of time internally. So the first step, I think the internal productivity thing, which, that's probably like, it's more tangible. You're working every day, you're on your things. The external ones are a little bit harder to kind of go through, but we created a labeling tool, right? And when it's funny, the labeling tool for telecommunications, for those of you who are in our industry, you'll kind of sympathize right away. Every single data outlet that's on that job needs to be individually labeled, and there's millions of these labels, and we put together like 8 to 10 sheets in the back of a drawing. It's a laborious, tedious process. Everybody always makes mistakes doing it. We figured out a way to kind of automate that process with not that much consultants, not that much background. We made our own little separate Revit plugin, and we wound up saving 3 FTEs, right, on this production tool, which is like, when you look in the grand scheme of things, it was like a real grand slam. And we do, on data centers in particularly, that's basically all they are. So the amount of time that we saved was pretty phenomenal. So that was a real big win for us. And we're actually trying to spin the labeling tool that we've been using into the post model from an operations standpoint and give sort of the digital twin. We'll talk about digital twins at some point and my opinion on them. But, I like simple tools that operational people can use, can get their hands on and work with. And it's funny, I forget the last panel we were on, Jeff, and we were talking about this, and I'm like, for things to be really, really useful and adopted quickly, like it's got to have the sort of the iPad moment, right? When can I take the iPad, punch the buttons, get the thing to do what I need to do, and get it to work, right? That sort of specific digital twin tool for people who are managing the telecommunications infrastructure, that's what that little piece does. Is it the big digital twin that covers everything else? No, but I know that those people that are managing that data are going to be so thankful and happy for that little program that we wrote for them.
It's amazing how something so simplistic can be so powerful, and we overlook it all the time. You and I both have this discussion, you call it the digital twin, I call it the data twin, but even whenever we say it, people have this thought process of like this heart beating building with every nook and cranny. And it's like, that's great. But if I can't find my outlets and if I can't know where then this is useless to me anyway. I'm digitally running through the forest instead of physically. So I love that some of the simplistic things came out as the true. It came out as the power. This isn't cheap. Right. This is not a cheap move by Syska. This you're talking about, you have a process for ideation. You ran a contest. 80 topics is a lot. Where and how do you place value on that? How is this really translating to value for you as a company?
So interestingly enough, I talked to a lot of the others who've kind of done this, and they said that is one of their biggest challenges. And I was in my own mind, I was gearing myself up and being ready to explain that to my bosses, et cetera, when we have sort of our annual meeting, et cetera, because I knew that's what they were going to ask, like, hey, like, what are we getting out of this? So then comes our principal retreat. And at our principals retreat, I'm given about 45 minutes update, what's going on, what's doing. I do the same thing. I spend about 30 minutes talking, and then I kind of open up the floor and I just say, hey, like, how is sort of this? And I give them the update, like, how is this helping you? One of the principals stands up. This open space tool has been a game changer for me and my specific client. I think it's basically getting us to do more work. Another principal stood up and said, hey, listen, the Ideathon really got my office jazzed. They were all in a conference room together and they were so stoked that we were, trying to figure out these ideas and solve these specific problems. The person who worked on that data labeling and that other thing, his manager stood up and said, hey, listen, that piece probably from a retention perspective is as good as gold. You basically gave a whole bunch of resources to not a high-level person. This was a mid-level person, almost junior person in the firm. You empowered them to develop something like that. That really helped me. And then some of the others on the business development side were like, hey, listen, I went and talked to my clients and we talked about the boiler. We talked about the couple of the other investments we made. We have an investment in a VAV box that's pretty spectacular, and it got us to higher level conversations with our owners, and it's really helped us talk about something different. You go in as an MEP engineer, like there's a lot of good MEP engineering firms out there, and they do good HVAC design, they do good electrical design, and if you go in and you just kind of say that and you spin that however you want to spin that can only get you so far. But if you talk to them and you say, hey, listen, I know what some of your challenges are and what you're trying to do, and we're actively trying to solve those challenges. And as these things come up, we're willing to bring products and other things in front of you that are like pilots, so you can you can go back to your bosses, you can fill your corporate missions, et cetera, by trying these things and doing this stuff. And it sort of resonated. And he took a lot of the wind out of my sails, because the next time when I went to the bosses and I was going to literally try and crunch number, I was like, all right, well, open space is at this valuation and this is at that, et cetera. They both of them, the whole committee was like, listen, we are all in on this. This from an ROI perspective, this is driving our business. It's driving our people. It's nailing our Vision 2025 and what we want to accomplish. And they, in the coming years, they've doubled down on what we're doing. It's been a great response from that. I don't know that 100% answers your question, because I couldn't put a specific value on it, but that's how it went.
Well, no, that's the key is, right? Like everybody is looking for that specific ROI or that one
Hmm.
thing. And it's like, no, it's actually a combination of a couple of different things. You can look at, the value that you've brought to your client, which has grown your bottom line.
Hmm.
You can look at, the reduced risk of the different things that you've done. But you hit on one that I think I want to dig into, because you've made it from our pre-calls. We talked about this.
Hmm.
You've made it part of sort of how you grow and keep talent.
Yeah.
And that you look at innovation very specifically, I think different than anyone I've ever talked to. So, how do you look at innovation as Syska and as it relates to your people?
Yeah. So for us, innovation is all about professional development, and it revolves around professional development. Everything is secondary to that. Our people are our assets. We sell our people's brains. We don't have a product. We literally sell what we're thinking and what we come up with, right? So for us, how do you engage your folks? Like, one of the things, there's so many studies about disengagement, people going to work, doing their job, and going home. It's very easy in the MEP industry actually to have that sort of mindset, because predominantly, on the MEP side, we've been doing things the same for at least 30 or 40 years. So it's easy to get caught in that mindset. So how do you spin them up? How do you get them thinking differently? How do you get them to basically, be more proactive, right? Try new things, get, and this innovation for us really drives that. And I think people, more than anything, are looking for things to be a part of and ways to contribute more than just doing your job. And a lot of people really embrace the fact that the company is thinking about this and doing things to improve themselves. I think a lot of times the tools that we come up with, and there's a bunch of other tools that we've come up with on a similar basis. How do we sort of, how do we improve our employees' experience with the tools and processes and things that we give them? I think it resonates. It resonates really well, and it's almost like a cultural statement. And it's funny, I've been writing about AI and machine learning, and we've been doing a lot of that stuff. We've got some really cool things on the construction administration side. We're probably the only firm that actively is in programming in Procore to get an API in their API to get us the information we want better, faster than anybody else. So that's been interesting from that standpoint. I will say one thing that's interesting also is, from us, we're keenly focused on the pre-construction area, because it is, in our mind, probably the most important phase in construction, and it is the most under sort of served. And now it's become a challenge that all our clients are putting as the top number one piece, because there's now, on top of cost, there's lead time issues, right? There's all sorts of things that are going on in the external world, and we are actively on the pre-construction side, looking for ways, looking for things that we can do. We've got some plug-in tools that we're developing to kind of help owners drive that process, and that I think is something from an innovation standpoint that, as an industry, we all really have to get better at really quickly.
No, I couldn't agree with you more on that on a couple of things. I'm going to start with the pre-construction. And I'm going to take you back to where I wanted to go before, but
Hmm.
you hit right into my sweet spot, right where I want to be, because I think honestly, as we look, we've gotten better and better. And from a technology perspective, we've been thinking about, from the construction project back, but really it's about the planning process,
Hmm.
right? The one place that we have the opportunity to make an impact, to be safer, to reduce risk, to, you know, have cost certainty, schedule certainty, and to really plan correctly is in pre-construction. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the next 3 to 5 years. I think you're going to see, well, I like to call it the rise of pre-construction. It's coming.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to see you guys, really focused on that. How does that help in, all the things that you do? What are the big impacts of pre-con
Hmm.
that you guys see?
So interestingly enough, so we do a lot of design build work. And in the design build work, we're as engineers, I feel like sometimes the contractors treat us better than the owners do because they realize, get a good set of plans, you get a good design, you get some good things going, it makes for a much smoother project.
Mm.
So for us, right, that collaboration with contractors who are, pre-construction is their thing. We're not pre-construction experts, we're MEP engineers, but the ability to kind of like, and I had to coach my team over the years, like, we need to play ball in the pre-construction process. A lot of times it's like, well, like we call a vendor, the vendor sizes equipment, and there's like, oh, well, we want to make sure this gets here and this gets there, and you fit everything in your neat engineer's brain, and then you go and you talk to a contractor, and he's got a totally different opinion about how he can do things. He could do this faster. Or my favorite was we'd specify a piece of equipment, and he'd be like, have you seen the instructions that come with that piece of equipment to put it together and to test that thing? And I'm like, no, I don't know. And he's
Oh,
like,
look at that.
this other piece of equipment is so much easier for me and is going to save me tons and tons of man hours. And we as engineers, we don't really know that, but working in collaboration with somebody, we start to see that. And then, sucking the real drivers out of the owner. Like, what are they really driving towards? Are we optimizing our design towards cost, towards schedule, towards decarbonization, And sometimes, everybody always says yes, 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 yes. But everything costs something, everything impacts the schedule, everything has a carbon impact. And until you see your options, you can't really optimize what you're doing. And unfortunately, until you get pre-construction going and you got some good numbers and good things going, kind of how long things, you get the trade-offs going, you don't really get that exact sort of value statement out of your owner. And to me, that's sort of like, optimization is another thing for us that's been a core value of everything we're trying to do at Syska. The whole standpoint of, MEP engineers have been doing the same thing for a long time. The differentiator is, but we're going to figure out a way to do it the absolute best way that a client wants it, whether that be by cost, by schedule, et cetera, so.
And that's great because you're pushing into that design build world where, there's been this chuck it over the fence idea. And now you're actually harnessing the power of both. Because in that description of that, handler or that product or whatever it was, it's like, hey, constructability plays a role here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, if we can get our contractors and our engineers and our designers kind of focused on and coming together to collaborate better, you can actually then turn to the owner and say, okay, what is it you really want? And here's how we as a team can deliver it, because our knowledge as a team is far better than our knowledge as any one given, part of that vertical. And that's crazy. It's great to see you guys doing it. And I'm sure, and then it turns around and the owners are happier and
Yeah.
your costs are more on and your schedule's more on. And, there's also now probably an opportunity with a great design,
Mhm.
for us to move into that design for manufacturing and assembly, right? I'm sure
Yeah.
as the light bulb goes on for a mechanical contractor to go, hey, listen, if they design it that way, then I can fab it that way. So I can take
Yeah.
time off the job site, put it into a facility, reduce risk, higher safety, right? Higher
Yeah.
quality.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. One of the buckets that we talked about from an investment standpoint, we call it the industrialization of design. And I'll borrow a term from architect friends of mine, shop architects, who we invested in their company called Assembly. And basically, from their perspective, is like they think the built environment, a building should be built in a very similar fashion to how Boeing builds an airplane, right? You basically get yourself to the point where it's into every sort of subcomponent or sub assembly is specced out, is toleranced, sourced from multiple vendors, etc.,
Mhm.
and prescriptively placed together based on your owner's requirement. It's sort of like prefab, but kind of like on steroids.
Yep.
And certain industries, like I think the residential industry, is probably ready for it because of where they are complexity, and that's one of the things that assembly is tackling. Um, but places like the data center space, right? Data center is basically a really large machine that's just built together as a building. There's huge opportunities for that and getting that to work, and the amount of time and effort that can be saved if you can actually achieve that. Um, so companies that are making steps for that direction, I think, are something that are really important for us. Um,
And there's so much of that even in a data center, it's like the whole thing is that computer, and you're
mhm,
optimizing to build that computer, and you're looking at how you can build the components to be cooler and faster
mhm,
and more, all of that can work better. But there's so many parts of major buildings
yeah.
that are pretty similar that way. And we
Mhm,
can productize a lot of them, which will allow us to reach the volume that we need. So when
yeah.
you're talking about hospitals, a lot of what's behind the walls and in the ceilings, that's a product, man. That's
Yeah.
not very different. Yes, how a cancer treatment facility versus a children's hospital versus, an outpatient. There's differences. We can apply and focus on those
Mhm,
differences and then, shed some of the noise. Isn't it great that when something's productized in a way and you're like, okay, let's bolt all these Legos together. Now we have this cool group of Legos here that are the artistic part, that are
yeah.
the feeling.
Yeah.
Um, man, it drives our focus, right?
Yeah. And it's funny, one of the other companies we've invested, a company called HVAC Manufacturing Inc., they came up with this device called a smart air valve. And simplistically, I like to explain it as like somebody back in the day, used to have to buy a hat, size 6, 7, 8, or 9, based on the size of your head. You
Mhm.
couldn't share that hat with anybody, and that was it. And then somebody came along and put those dots and the plastic thing on the back of the head, and it was like, hey, one size fits all, right? I'm sure that guy's a really happy man right now, right? So this company came along with the same exact thing from a smart air valve, but it's a VAV box that works. One size box can work from 0 to 2,500 CFM, which is kind of like almost just about every box we use in a commercial setting. Um, and that tool, right, is part of the industrialized design. Now, if we're doing something that needs that kit of parts for a design, right, that piece just gave us so much flexibility in the other sort of prefab components that go into it. It was like that makes a lot of sense for us. Not
Yep.
only is it a good investment and a smart idea, and the Harvard physicists that came up with the reason why it works are, beyond any brilliance that I'll ever imagine. But it fit into sort of like the theme of what you're trying to do and the problems you're trying to solve as an owner, right? So those sort of things kind of like they step on, they follow each other from an idea perspective.
That's awesome. And I mean, you just nailed it. That's how, who would have thought that the hat and the little couple of things would go to something like that then scales, allows them to get, at scale for manufacturing. And, I'll never be as smart as those folks, but then again, we're connecting it to what
Hmm.
sells and what really and how it operates. So
And
that's the
how it
cool part.
operates. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've been going for a while. I want to give you one chance to kind of pontificate on the future. You got, your
Hmm.
7 buckets, your things going on. Where's your head going to the future? And what do you think people in the industry should be thinking about?
That's a big question. Um, I think AI and machine learning is something that everybody needs to wrap their heads around. I don't think you should be afraid of it. I think you should try and not, I wouldn't say, the chat GPT and the other stuff that's commercially available, like, yeah, that's cool and that's fun to play with. But using the true ML and AI software, like, use it and use it to sort of enhance the employees that you have, make the people that you have more productive, make their work life better. I think that's really the trend that's going to start differentiating. And what's going to happen is the companies that don't embrace AI are going to have trouble keeping their people their greatest asset, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be able to deliver products and other things the same way that they have now, but it's really a train that's coming, and I encourage everybody to lean in. Our experience so far is it's not replacing people's work; it's actually enhancing their ability to do work better. And if you take that mindset, I think you'll be on a great innovations journey.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that embracing and understanding and heading on with a little trepidation and a little bit of I don't trepidation isn't the word I want to use. A little bit of reality and understanding its
Yeah,
true capabilities is key. But yeah, wrapping your head around it now, because if you don't, you're going to be chasing. And
yeah.
I'm gonna drop a plug for another podcast that I was
Hmm.
actually listening to on Chat GPT. Work Life with Adam Grant. Everybody knows I'm a huge Adam Grant fan. The title is awesome. It says Chat GPT did not title this podcast with Ali Miller and Ethan Mollick. And I will tell you that I even have talked to people about Chat GPT a lot. And this changed my mind on it. This really opened up for me some of the use cases and also gave me other resources. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, folks, jump on and listen to it. Big Adam fan. Because Robert, I think you're right. Like Rob, the future of AI, machine learning, is augmenting and getting us out. Just like you created a tool to label outlets and take that work off, and you saved 3 FTEs. But I'm going to hazard a guess you didn't get rid of 3 people. You took 3 people and you put them on a much higher value, much better process than just, labeling things, etc. That nobody has fun with that. And
Hmm.
you've increased the throughput that Syska Hennessy can do, which means you can grow your top line that you're looking for.
It's exact. You hit the nail exactly on the head. Hit the nail exactly on the head.
Well, listen, I'm sure people listening in had a great time. I had a great time. We're going to skip the news today, man. This is just me and Rob sitting down having a great rap. We've been on a couple of panels together. I hope we're on some more down the road. I
Yeah.
want to just thank you for sitting down and talking to me today.
Yeah, this is great, man. Thanks for having us. It's been a great journey. I'm happy to share it with anybody, and I encourage everybody. I love this space. I love talking about this space, just like you do. Feel free, reach out. Especially if there's any companies out there that have some great ideas. Anybody want to join a great company? We're here and we're having fun doing it.
Yeah, it's all about those great companies that we all want to partner with. And so take a look, follow Rob. You can get all of his info in the show notes. So make sure to check him out, make sure to connect with him. Thank you for tuning in today to Geek Out for our interview with Rob Ioanna. To read all our news stories, to learn more about guests, to listen to this show, visit thecontechcrew.com. This is the ConTech Crew signing out. Until next time, enjoy the ride and geek out.